Ex-racist people of Reddit. What changed your views? Learning about people by talking to them instead of listening to what my family had to say about them. Brother was racist. We both love science fiction. One time he was talking about all the cool races in the Star Wars and Star Trek and Mass Effect universes. How creative Lucas and Roddenberry were. He talked about how great it would be to be among those races as a human and acquaint yourself with alien cultures and people and mythology. I said, you can't even mingle with the other races on your home planet. Maybe it was the weed, but what I said had some effect on him. He's very noticeably more tolerant and curious about other peoples now. I think he realized that his previous philosophies were not in line with those of the Federation. Good for him. Edit. No, I did realize what day it was. Nice coincidence though. May the force be with all of you. The army forced me to live with black people. Turns out I didn't hate anyone. I was just afraid of what I didn't understand and had some very stupid notions passed on to me from my dad and his dipshit friends. I will forever be grateful for the opportunity to understand a greater sample of people than my tiny hometown afforded me. Edit. Thank you all, kind strangers. Please no more awards though. If possible, please consider donating instead to an organization working to deprogram extremism and hate, like Parents for Peace or Life After Hate. Not me, but my grandpa told me that when he was young he was a bit racist, due to his a whole alcoholic dad being really racist and teaching him to treat others of different races like trash. He told me this stopped though when he was around 13 when his dad left. He realized how stupid it was to judge others based on race, and I'm glad he realized how stupid it was since he's a really sweet guy now. My grandma grew up in Virginia in the 1900s. Being racist is just the default setting. Nana loved her family more than anything, though. So at one point in the late 1980s, she met her first not 100% white grandkid, and discovered she still loved him. She made astounding late-life progress accepting that darker skin-toned people were not only people, but family, friends and welcome in her house. Man, I don't even know where to start with this one. I grew up in the middle of fucking nowhere, Mississippi, where the slave trade was referred to as the Great African Migration in our history books. Every person of color was referred to by the N-word as just the default. It wasn't until I moved the fuck out of the South that I began to comprehend what racism was. I wish I could say I had a moment of clarity that washed away all the racist bullshit that I'd grown up with, but it was more like a couple decades worth of mental deprogramming I had to fight against. There was so much underlying hate of different people that warped how my view of the world was. When I was wounded in Iraq, two white guys stepped over me. One literally stepped on my back, to get themselves to a safer place. A black guy picked me up like I was a child, carried me to safety, and held my hand until a medic got there. I moved away from my one-horse hometown and got away from my extremely prejudiced family. I don't have personal experience in this, but I wanted to bring up Daryl Davis in this thread. He is a black musician, writer that has gotten roughly 200 people to leave the KKK or other white supremacist organizations. He is worth looking into for this topic. I grew up in a white bubble. White neighborhood, white schools, white friends. I wasn't hate-filled or anything towards other races, just a bit nervous due to zero experience. I heard a lot of racial epithets, but didn't say them myself. Going to college, I met many people of many different races, and found most of them were good people. I discovered that the same 10% asshole to 90% good people I found among white people at my high school translated to college as well. The assholes were not grouped in a particular minority, but pretty universally scattered. Mom was surprised when I brought home a girlfriend from college who wasn't white. Mom asked why I didn't tell her in advance, but I didn't think it was important. I married that girl a few years later. Left the church and my conservative family. Started examining myself closely. The really tricky thing about being a racist is that you never think you're a racist at the time. In the moment you feel like you're just quoting statistics, or calling it how it is, etc. It takes a lot of work to actually stop, look at yourself, and then dig that ugly racist worm out of your heart. Moving out of a predominantly white neighborhood and meeting people of differences, races and backgrounds. Realizing they are just people like you trying to live their lives. Joined the military, left home and experienced cultures around the world. I wouldn't say I was ever racist and thought I was better than anyone, but I was severely lacking in cultural awareness due to growing up in a small town surrounded by openly racist people. Luckily, my children are able to grow in a completely different environment than the one I did. My dad has some pretty xenophobic points of view and that definitely rubbed off on me when I was younger. Meeting actual POC through my teenage years made me realize I was being dumb. Black guy here. I just want to say people of color is the stupidest label everyone keeps using. It's the same damn thing as colored people. If you're okay with one, you're okay with the other. Both terms are shitty. I wouldn't have classified myself as racist, but I definitely had some racist ideas about native people in my city growing up. There are a lot of native addicts and vagrants, but it's very much a result of a system that's rigged against those communities. I didn't know any of that growing up, so when I saw a group of drunk, native people in the park or something, I was generally unimpressed or even frightened. And I definitely applied those feelings to all the native people I came across. It's hard to change those reactions, but we can all identify the bad reactions and try to curb them. Parents were old white people, so they'd make Chinaman jokes, or complain about bad Asian drivers. Nothing obscene but still racist. Growing up, kids my age were racist bigots who bullied everything they could. This was the real tragedy. I think kids these days are less LKKE they were in my day. Took me a few years to adjust to today's views. Still not entirely there despite being liberal in a lot of ways. Not me, but my first roommate out of college who grew up in rural PA told me that watching New Girl made her less racist. Her parents were super racist, and her brother was a literal neo-Nazi convicted of a hate crime. But watching the show in her teens and seeing people of a bunch of different races have normal and positive interactions was mind-blowing because her parents literally taught her it was impossible. That opened her up to meeting all different types of people. Then she went to college and met people from all different backgrounds and became good friends and formed relationships with them. She even ended up marrying a mixed-race man and they're quite happy with a baby. Her family does not speak to her, but I am certain she's better off. I grew up thinking I was not a racist. I didn't think badly of blacks or Hispanics. But racist jokes didn't hurt anyone. Then I moved to an area with about a 90% Hispanic population. The little things that weren't racist were the "how many Mexican" type jokes were hurtful and I felt bad. So I stopped. The easy same thing with blacks, Asians etc. was about the same time. I thought I was a racist, but then I realized that didn't mean someone who likes to race. I grew up in a very small town in Iowa. Couple of hundred people. All white. So I guess I was raised not to discriminate against people that were different from me because we were all the same. Once I got older and moved to the city, oh yeah. Racism is alive and well in Iowa. I didn't fall into that trap. I didn't understand it. Ended up in Alabama. My best friend was black. We just had the same sense of humor and liked the same things. I credit him with my kids being non-racist. He would crack jokes about racial things and they would be shocked. As they got older they just rolled their eyes. Funniest thing was one of my daughter's date shows up and he opens the door and introduced himself as her dad. He moved to Michigan. I miss Charles. Apparently I am inherently racist because I am white, male, and cisgendered. I have been told this exact thing by a few people, despite the fact I base my opinions on what people say and how they act. I grew up. As a child, I lived in the southern US and my parents and the whole society was racist. The only black people I came in contact with were maids, gardeners, janitors. Schools were segregated. The only Asians I knew owned Chinese restaurants and we didn't socialize with them. As a child, I figured that adults must know something about these black people that I didn't know because they seemed okay to me. When I grew up, married and left the South, it was holy shit. What the fuck had I been living with? So when I read about racist parents producing racist kids, I think, not necessarily. It's simple really, I was raised in a racist family. Growing up I was kinda racist. When I actually spent time with people of different races I quickly realized how stupid that is. I don't think I was ever really racist, but I subconsciously would think that way. I have to stop and remind myself every now and then that I shouldn't think like that. I never thought I don't want to be friends with him because he's black, but I would put people of different colors into stereotypes. I'm still struggling with it, but I never make decisions based on it. I don't know if I can ever train myself to not think like that, but I have trained myself to notice when I'm doing it and correct myself. As a WOC working in a highly technical field where there aren't many POC or women, reading this, I am so touched. I am left with the message that just being my own special self is perhaps breaking down long-held prejudices, dogma amongst my peers. My dad used to make awful racist jokes, I just grew up and realized he sucked. I saw a #StopAsianHate billboard while driving on the freeway and thought, you know what, I'll stop hating Asian people. I'm not racist, but I used to be Islamophobic. I then met two of my friends and saw how Islam really was and changed. I developed white guilt and realized that all the white in me was causing me to hate black people specifically without even realizing it. I also didn't post a black box on Instagram to stand strong with BLM. I'm basically a modern-day slaver. I finally realized vegans really aren't that bad after all. Meeting and working with black people and Hispanics. I was raised by racists, grew up in an all-white suburb, went to all-white private schools. As a child I remember not liking other children who weren't white. It wasn't taught by my parents, they were always accepting of everyone. Still not sure what was the root of it. If I had to guess it was either television or just ignorance. But before 7th grade one met a kid at my summer camp and we instantly became best friends. I think pretty much overnight changed my mind on the matter. He taught me so much about black culture, and it really changed my point of view. We're still best buds 17 years later. I'm still racist. Realized that I was and still am racist and will be for life. Racism is a bias in human judgment, not a personality flaw that can be cured. Being aware of your own racial bias is about as close to ex-racist you can get. A more accurate question would be, ex-racism deniers, what made you realize racism is a problem? Also, if this comment makes you mad because I am essentially calling you a racist, you are completely missing my point. You should try it the other way around. You'll be surprised by the results. Winking face. Being sexist is cooler cool. I became homophobic instead. I realized white people today aren't responsible for slavery. When they put the "End Racism" paint on the end zone lines of the football fields, that's when I decided to change. I grew up in a hugely diverse group of relatives and friends, so racism wasn't a thing I even knew existed until I hit 12-ish, and it honestly fucking baffled me. People are fucking stupid. I used to hate white people like a lot for no reason. I would always think they were evil and monsters. I was absolutely disgusted when I went to school and saw black people hanging out with white people. Until I realized the beauty in how they didn't care about the color of each other's skin. I felt so ashamed of judging someone because of their race. Now I treat white people the same as everyone else. Not an ex-racist, actually I'm black and know a COD YouTuber named Drift0R. Been watching him since the Modern Warfare 2 days and he's very open on the fact that he used to be on some racist shit as a kid. But like any ex-racist, his worldview opened up and you can see the difference, because he even brought his own evidence of it. At first I thought it'd turn me off from his content, but he clearly regrets it. First off, second off, he's an example that people are redeemable from past perspectives as long as they find themselves in headspace and time where they begin to see the world for what it really is, or supposed to be. No matter how far through this thread I read, there seems to be one major pattern. My parents, family were racist, and then I spent time with people of other ethnicities. It really proves that prejudice is just fear of something you don't easily recognize, and once a person actually learns a bit about them, it's much easier for them to accept it. It's a shame that when some people come across new cultures or tradition, their initial reaction is to reject it as it's not that normal. They know. Life really is just a big mix of shared experience. We don't have time to make judgments based on race. The fastest way to cure racism is to realize you hate everyone equally. Not so much racist but highly religious. I hated LGBTQ+ for literally no reason. Just because the Bible was against it. I grew up, think it's all dumb and totally accept whatever makes people happy. Before COVID I drove a car in the Atlanta Pride Parade. My grandparents are 100% racist. When they found out I was having a child with a half-white half-Micronesian, they disowned me. When they met my kids, they thought they were fantastic great-grandchildren. They admire their tan skin and say they are more real than my siblings' kids. Gets popcorn. This thread makes me extremely uncomfortable. It's mainly white people realizing minorities, especially black people, are humans too. It's positive, but just makes me realize there's a lot of racist people out there who view minorities as subhuman cause of their stupid upbringing and ignorant way of thinking. A black girl gave me the best top of all time.